RTV is a huge issue for the GR86, and today I'm going to drop my oil pan and check the oil pickup to see if I have any RTV in my GR86. Now my GR86 is still fairly new, just over 1,000 miles, 1,055 to be exact, but I've gone drifting with it and I do plan to track the GR86 as well. So I like to take care of the issue now rather than later. Now, if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, there are other options that you can do as well. You can take it to a certified mechanic to have them take a look at it to see if they can't address the issue, or you can take it to a Subaru or a Toyota dealership to see if they can't address the RTV issue. I should also say this as a disclaimer that I'm not a certified mechanic, but these are the steps to take if you want to address the RTV issue in the oil pickup in the GR86. So let's get started. Welcome to Gas and Watts. Things first, we're going to remove this skid plate right here. We have 8 12mm bolts to remove. Then we have 2 10mm bolts to remove and 5 tabs that we're going to remove. So let's get started. So the next thing we're going to do is drain the oil from the car. So we'll just get that started. As the oil is draining, we'll take off these 2 bolts here from the mid pipe. We'll also take a bolt off of a clip that's hanging from the transmission. Let me show you a little bit better. It's just this little hanging clip that's on here on the transmission. We'll take off that bolt. And then we'll also take off 2 bolts from the front of the mid pipe as well. So we got the bolt off of here from the mid pipe that's connected to the transmission here, this hanger here. Just to give it a little bit more room, we're gonna kind of loosen up these screws. We're not gonna remove them totally, but just kind of loosen up a little bit. And both of these are 12mm bolts. We're just gonna loosen them up really quick. Oh. So we just get a little room there. Yep. Okay, there we go. So from the top here, we're gonna have to unplug these 2 sensors here from the header down there. So they're attached to these. And then there are also 3 little tabs. One right here. And then this is the second. And then way down here is a third. So we'll unplug these 2 plugs and those little tabs from up here. So you'll just push on this tab and then you'll pull out. The plug should just come right out, actually. Let's see. There he goes. There's one. I'm holding right there. Wiggle a little bit. And 2. There you go. So now I just have to remove it from these tabs here and it should be good. So these tabs are kind of flushed to here. So to make it a little bit easier, I remove this connector that was connected here, and then I use for this here, I use this pick here to kind of get in between and kind of pull it out like this. Try to work it way out, and then I can kind of pull it, try to work it out. as much as I can. There you go. And I got it out. And on this one, kind of the same thing. I use a different tool though. I use this and kind of just got in between here and was able to kind of pull it out like that. And then there's one more way down here. So I'm gonna try to use this. It doesn't look like I might be able to. So I might have to use this pick here and just kind of get down there, or maybe get underneath the car. Let me see if I can't get underneath the car and pull it from underneath really quick. I'll take both of my tools with me. All right, almost there. There you go. Got it pulled out. There it goes. So we're now kind of in the front of the vehicle, and I need to remove these two bolts right here. So then I can remove the header from the GR86 and get that done. All right, it's off now. So I can just kind of let it hang here for a little bit. Just let it hang like that. We'll take off the header. Now that we've gotten the header off of the upper exhaust, we are going to take off these 3 bolts, or we're going to take off these 6 bolts from the header. So there's 3 bolts on the passenger side here that are 14 millimeter, and then 3 bolts over here on the driver's side. So we'll take those off and get the header off. So there are 11 10 millimeter bolts on the oil pan. So we're gonna try to remove that. And then once we remove the bolts, we will try to pry the oil pan open. So let's get to it. All right, time for the pry tool. So I'm going to just kind of slip this in here, and there's this handle here that kind of helps you hold on to the pry tool. And I'm gonna use this hammer to kind of hammer it in and then hammer it around. All right, so I've been trying to take this oil pan off for now going on almost an hour and a half now, and I've barely done anything. So I think I'm gonna call it a day and try something else tomorrow. So I may just kind of look for a different pry tool tomorrow and see if I can get something to pry open the oil pan. But for now, I think it's all ready to just drop down. I got a little bit through the RTV, but the pry tool that I have, I kept hammering, and it basically kind of felt like it got stuck on the RTV and didn't get any further. And then when I try to kind of scrape it down the side, it didn't really do anything. So change of plans. I'm gonna have to probably get a different type of pry tool and see if I can't pry open the RTV, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. All right, I was finally able to get the oil pan off with a combination of tools that I had on me. Actually, I had to pick up one tool to help me with prying it, but I did use the oil pan pry. It's not great. These bolts here kind of came loose, so I had to kind of screw them down quite a bit, and it was quite a pain to get them in. So the hammer kind of helped me get the pry in, but it didn't get it all the way in, and it was kind of hard for me to kind of get it to from one side of the oil pan to the other. So I wasn't sure if I was completely into the oil pan or if I had penetrated through the oil pan enough to kind of go to through the side of the oil pan. So I had this tool. It's just a kind of like a trim tool that I got with a trim kit that I have. So I stuck this in, kind of cutting through the RTV a little bit and kind of making space, making sure that I actually got through all the way through the oil pan. Once I got that, then I was able to kind of hammer this in further. And once it got into position, I was actually able to hammer it to the side and kind of all the way through. And then eventually I started using a rubber mallet because I didn't want to hit any of the block or anything like that and scratch that up. And once I got enough of a hole on the side, I actually have this trim tool that I got from Amazon. It kind of is able to kind of pry open anything. So this is usually used in homes and usually is used for removing the trim on the side of your house. So I was able to kind of stick this in because it was kind of thin enough here, stuck it in far enough, and then pry it open. And once I was able to use this and go through the side of the oil pan, it eventually kind of, I could hear it kind of pull away from the RTV. And once that happened, it was much easier, and I just kind of went around the oil pan using this pry tool until I was able to kind of get my hands on it and then kind of just pull it down. And once that happened, it was pretty easy and pretty quick. But at the very end, it kind of got stuck a little bit in the back because there's quite a bit of RTV there. I didn't want to just yank at it because you really don't want to break the oil pickup. If you break the oil pickup or crack it or anything like that, that's a whole nother issue, and you really don't want to do that. So I kind of wiggled it a little bit, and that helped. And once I kind of twisted it, it kind of came loose, and then I was able to kind of just drop the oil pan all the way down. So those are the techniques that I use. It took me about, in total, 2.5 hours to get done. I wish this tool was more helpful, and it kind of scraped up the oil pan quite a bit as well. I'm going to clean up the mating surfaces now, so we'll get all that cleaned up, and then we'll put the oil pan back on as well. So let's get to it. So that took us a little while, but we've got the oil pan cleaned up, the mating surface down below cleaned up, and we're ready to put some RTV here. But let me show you the oil pan really quick, and then I'll go down and I'll show you the mating surface as well. It's pretty clean now. There's some RTV residue around there, but that should be okay. It's ready to go. It took me probably about 2.5 hours. Clean the pan and the mating surface down below on the GR86. I did a little bit extra work down below just because this is something I'm doing myself. So I cleaned the RTV around the mating surface pretty well. This turned out pretty good. You can see here I scuffed up the pan a little bit while I was taking it off with the pry tool, but that should be okay. The RTV should fill that in. It's just the paint scratched a bit, but it should be okay. Let's go down below. So we've got the mating surface down here pretty much all clean. So this is the mating surface right here. And I even went ahead and cleaned up all the RTV that was around this crevice here and then outside as well. So see, so when you're doing this by yourself, you can kind of clean up the RTV if you like, but mainly you're just cleaning up this outer surface here, this mating surface here. We're finally almost there at the end of the RTV fix. I just put the bead of RTV on the mating point underneath the GR86. Unfortunately, I didn't get to film any of that because I didn't push record on my camera. But I was able to capture me putting the pan back on and tightening the 11 10mm bolts back onto the pan. I just hand tightened those, and then we will go back and torque those to 57 inch-pounds. That's 57 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds, very light. Or if you don't have an inch-pound torque, 6.7 Newton meters. Now, I have to do that in about an hour because we have to wait for the RTV. That's what the instruction says before we torque it. We just have to wait for an hour. So we'll wait, and then I'll go back in and torque those to 57 inch-pounds. While we're waiting, I'm gonna go ahead and change out the old oil filter for a new one. And the one thing I like about Subaru is that the oil filter is just right on top here. And we can just access it really easily. You have it. New oil filter ready. All right, it's been about an hour. It's time to torque up the pan bolts to 57 inch-pounds. So we'll go under there and do that really quick. And there is a pattern, and here's a picture of the pattern that you need to do for the bolts. It's kind of a star pattern. So you can either kind of memorize it or kind of pause the video here and kind of go through the pattern for torquing down those bolts. So let's get down there and torque them. All right, let's get the headers back on. So we've got the final steps all taken care of now. The headers are back in, the mid pipe is now all connected back up and everything like that. So it's all good and it's all ready to go. We just have to wait 24 hours before we can put the oil into the oil pan. So the RTV is ready for that. So we'll wait 24 hours and we'll fill up the oil, make sure the pan isn't leaking, and then I'll idle the car for about 10 minutes and then see if there's any leaks. Hopefully there's no leaks. If there's no leaks, then I think we're good. I might drive around for like a week without the skid pad on and see if there's any additional leaks or if there starts to be a leak, and then I can address the situation sooner rather than later. But I think we're all good for now, but let's wait 24 hours and we'll fill up with oil and check to see if everything is okay. So all we have to do now is wait. All right, it's been 24 hours. I'm gonna fill the car up with some oil and then check to see if there's any leaks. And then I'm gonna run the car on idle for about 10 minutes and then check again to see if there's any leaks. So the car takes 5.3 quarts. So we're just gonna put that in here. So I've waited about 10 minutes now to check the oil pan. The oil actually sits a little bit above where the oil pan meets the block. So I don't see any oil coming out. I even used a towel to kind of wipe around to see if there was any oil leak. So nothing, so it's good right now. We'll start up the car to see if anything happens once we warm up the oil a little bit. So we'll wait around for about 10 minutes. I'll let it idle and hopefully nothing is leaking. We're finally finished with the RTV fix for the GR86. The oil pan's looking good. I filled it up with oil and just let it sit for about 10 minutes and there wasn't any leaks. I idled the car for about 10 minutes and it doesn't seem to be any leaks. So I think we're pretty good. I might leave the skid plate off for about a week, drive it around, and then hopefully there's no leaks. But if there is, I can address it as soon as possible. So I'll just leave the skid plate off for now and drive it around for a while and see if there's any issues in a week. But hopefully there's not, and it's pretty much resolved. Now, I dropped the oil pan pretty early for my GR86 only because I wanted to address the issue as soon as possible. Now, we only found about 2 strands of RTV inside of the oil pickup. Was it worth it for me to do that? Probably not. If you're gonna daily this, are those 2 strands gonna actually cause any damage for your car? Probably not, but I like the fact that I addressed it anyways, just in case, since I'm gonna drift the car and take it to the track. Again, as a disclaimer, I'm not a certified mechanic, but I wanted to try to at least do it myself. Even if you have no experience, it's a little bit intimidating to think about doing RTV, but you can do it. And if you liked the episode, give us a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to Gas and Watts. We really like to get to 1,000 subscribers, so please help us out. Also hit the notification button so you can get the latest episodes of Gas and Watts. With that, we'll see you next time.